Welcome back to our news bulletin. The death toll from the coronavirus pandemic has surpassed 5,000 in Europe as worldwide fatalities surged to over 11,000. Italy has reported 627 deaths in 24 hours, taking the total to 4,032, while over 1,000 people have died in Spain. Details in this report.
Governments around the world are increasingly adopting sweeping measures to stem the spread of the new coronavirus. Jordan has imposed a lockdown in the country starting from today to combat COVID-19. Colombia has also announced a compulsory general confinement from Tuesday until April 13. Zimbabwe has reported its first case, while Singapore says 2 patients of the new coronavirus have died, marking its first fatalities from the virus.
2 patients in our National Center for Infectious Diseases have passed away this morning due to complications arising from COVID-19 infection, despite the best efforts of our medical team to care for them. Our thoughts are with their families and their loved ones during this difficult moment.
A number of airlines across the world have suspended their operations, but despite all restrictions, many citizens continue to travel. The World Health Organization has warned that the young people are not immune from the coronavirus and must avoid socializing.
Today, I have a message for young people. You're not invincible. This virus could put you in hospital for weeks or even kill you. Even if you don't get sick, the choices you make about where you go could be the difference between life and death for someone else.
The vaccine for the deadly infection has not been made yet, but the WHO says 20 vaccines against the coronavirus are currently being developed worldwide.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has ruled out a complete lockdown in the country for now in the wake of coronavirus outbreak. Speaking to reporters in Islamabad, Khan said he will announce a financial package next week to neutralize the impact of the epidemic on the country's economy. More in this report by our correspondent Sumaira Khan.
While Pakistan reported its 3rd coronavirus death on Friday, Prime Minister Imran Khan said he is not considering a countrywide lockdown as an option for now. However, he advised people to follow social distancing measures as the country is facing dire threats due to the pandemic.
My biggest reason for opposing a total lockdown is that the country's common man is the one most at risk. That is why we do not want construction to stop. Through this, people will at least earn an income.
The Prime Minister appealed to media houses to rely on accurate reporting in order to avoid panic. He urged people to exercise precautionary measures for the next month and a half.
I appeal to media owners, opinion makers, and journalists to avoid sensationalism. The government will provide PEMRA with guidelines to ensure news channels did not spread panic. Panicking is more dangerous for us than coronavirus.
The Prime Minister said he will announce an economic package to counter the impact of the COVID-19 on the country's economy. Meanwhile, the National Disaster Management Authority Chairman, Lieutenant General Muhammad Afzal said measures to stop the outbreak are being taken. He said necessary equipment including safety kits are being imported while isolation centers are being set up across Pakistan.
Recently, we ordered first consignment, which includes thermal scanners and 100,000 PCR testing kits. Let me also explain it to you. One kit can be used for minimum 90 tests. That means if we have 100,000 PCR kits, we can conduct 9 million tests.
According to the World Health Organization, there are currently 461 confirmed and 530 suspected cases in Pakistan. But officials have warned that the tally could rise if social distancing and other precautionary measures are not observed.
In another development, WHO representative for Pakistan Palitha Mahipala calls for urgent and aggressive actions to combat the new coronavirus. Speaking in Islamabad, he said a minimum of 2-week constant effort is required to be better equipped to deal with the epidemic. More in this report by our correspondent Isa Naqvi.
As the world grapples to contain the spread of the coronavirus pandemic, Pakistan is also feeling the heat of the situation. WHO representative in Pakistan, Palitha Mahipala, has stressed the need to step up efforts in order to contain the outbreak.
The response has been elevated to the highest level by Honorable Prime Minister by 13th of March. Now, the response is now at the highest level of the country. That is very, very impressive and good. And Pakistan need to continue the detect, test, treat, isolate, trace and mobilize their people in collective response. And media can play a huge role in that. And scale up health facilities is also very much important.
Mahipala said the fatality rate from the disease stands at 4.18% globally. However, in the worst hit countries, the situation is more complicated.
This case fatality depends on who have been affected. When it is the elderly people who are affected and comorbid people, then the case fatality goes up. Therefore, the countries where demography is subjected to more transition and there's maturity where number of elderly people are high, then case fatality can go up.
The WHO representatives also said that there is no evidence of an effective medicine for the coronavirus patients. While clinical testing of various vaccines and medicines is being done across the world, he advised people to take extra care during this period. Reporting for Indus News, Isa Naqvi, Islamabad.
Indian internet ban has hit the health sector in occupied Kashmir hard as Valley reports its first coronavirus case. The occupied territory has been reeling under curfew and complete shutdown for the last 230 days. Kashmiri doctors and health workers have asked the Indian government to end communications blackout to counter the epidemic. They said human security and health of the people of the valley must not be kept hostage to the so-called security of the state. The medics said the outbreak of COVID-19 in the valley is a potential explosion waiting to happen. They said it is absolutely necessary the internet is restored in the valley before the outbreak becomes uncontrollable. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has urged American citizens to call on their government to lift sanctions amid coronavirus pandemic. In a statement, Rouhani said many ordinary Iranians have lost their health, jobs, and income due to U.S. curbs. He said it is time for Americans to ask their government for answers and not allow their history to be blackened further. Rouhani said the war on COVID-19 can only be successful if all nations work together for its containment. The president warned that under a pandemic situation, Tehran, Paris, London, and Washington are not far apart. Rouhani said the surrounding oceans of a continent are not an adequate defense for the U.S. in this pandemic. Iran says it has exchanged a prisoner with France after Paris released an Iranian detained over violations of U.S. sanctions against Tehran. Iranian state media says Tehran has returned a French academic held on security charges after Paris freed an Iranian engineer. It said French government released the Iranian despite French court's decision to extradite him to the U.S. The media said Paris freed the prisoner in an act of mutual cooperation after Tehran showed the intention to release French citizen. France has been asking Iran to release two French researchers, Fariba Adelkha and Roland Marshall, detained in 2019. Iran has also carried out a prisoner exchange with US, Australia, and Germany in recent months. In another news, Seoul says Pyongyang has fired two short-range projectiles from Pyongan province towards the east coast of the Korean peninsula. In a statement, South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff said such actions are highly inappropriate amid COVID-19 crisis and called for an immediate stop. Meanwhile, Japan's cabinet secretariat said it detected at least one projectile, but it presumably had not reached Tokyo's territorial waters. This is North Korea's third launch of short-range missiles and projectiles this month. The UAE's branch of Red Crescent says two of its aid workers have been killed in Yemen after unknown armed men kidnapped them in Aden. In a tweet, the body said its workers were killed in one of the world's most vulnerable humanitarian zones. Yemen's south has been a conflicted zone between government forces and separatists. The two parties signed a power-sharing agreement in Riyadh last November with little sign of implementation on the ground. Tens of thousands of people, mostly civilians, have been killed in Yemen's conflict and millions displaced since 2015. Damascus says Russian President Vladimir Putin called his Syrian counterpart Bashar al-Assad to discuss the developments of Idlib ceasefire. State media says the violations committed by the rebels were also discussed during the call. In a statement, the Kremlin said both leaders discussed the promotion of political process within the framework of Syrian Constitutional Committee. It said the leaders also discussed issues related to rendering humanitarian assistance to Syria. According to the statement, the two sides agreed to continue contacts at different levels. Earlier, Turkey and Russia reached a ceasefire agreement on Syria's northwest Idlib on 5th March. Meanwhile, Turkey says it is not withdrawing troops from Syria's de-escalation zone of Idlib. The defense ministry said only planned deployment and distribution of forces in northwestern Syria is being done. It said all decisions taken under the Moscow-Ankara deal are being implemented with the utmost care. Earlier, the defense ministry said 2 Turkish soldiers have been killed in a rocket attack in Idlib province. The ministry did not identify the group it holds responsible for the attack. These were Ankara's first casualties since a ceasefire between Ankara and Moscow was agreed on 6th March. The US-based NGO Human Rights Watch says Greece is denying migrants and refugees their fundamental right to seek asylum. In a report, the body said nearly 200 refugees are being detained on the Lesbos island in unacceptable conditions. It said 436 others have been transported to the Malakasa Center in Athens, where conditions are unknown. The HRW said Greek officials have been holding women and children fleeing war and persecution in the open in cold temperatures for weeks. It said the authorities are denying migrants their right to get the humanitarian and legal assistance they need and are entitled to. Since their arrival, refugees have been restricted to areas in small towns and villages of Malveos, Clio, Agrios, Demetrios in the north. The U.S. Defense Department says it has successfully tested an unarmed hypersonic missile. The weapon has the potential to overwhelm an adversary's defense systems. The Pentagon said a test missile flew at a hypersonic speed, more than 5 times the speed of sound, to a designated impact point. Officials said the U.S. is now ready to move to the next phase towards fielding a hypersonic strike capability. Hypersonic capabilities have the potential to rewrite the balance of power across land, sea, air, and space. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. As the coronavirus crisis exacerbates, the US and Mexico have agreed to restrict non-essential travel across their border in an effort to limit the spread of COVID-19. President Donald Trump announced that his administration will invoke a health-focused statute to block migrants from entering US illegally. The non-essential travel measures will also restrict tourism at the border. Mexico's Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard said trade, work, and medical trips will not be restricted at the border. He said the measures against illegal immigration mean Washington can rapidly return Central Americans and Mexican migrants it arrests. A U.S. official said the restrictions would not impact rail or trucking shipments across the border. So far, the U.S. has many more confirmed coronavirus cases and deaths than Mexico. Amid the COVID-19 outbreak, letters have been sent to over 65,000 retired doctors and nurses in England and Wales, asking them to return to the National Health Service. Senior UK officials said the former employees are needed to help boost frontline emergency services. The development comes after the government pledged to ensure that all hospitals have enough protective gear and ventilators. In Scotland, former medical workers have also been asked to consider returning to the health service. Meanwhile, police arrested a man after he refused to isolate himself upon arrival on the Isle of Man. Earlier, authorities announced self-isolation for 14 days under emergency legislation. In Lebanon, authorities have been unable to provide refugee camps with sanitizers or masks, leaving migrants exposed to the coronavirus pandemic. The country, which has already recorded 149 cases of the coronavirus, hosts 1 million refugees. More in this report.
Ever since the coronavirus pandemic reached Lebanon, Syrian refugee Mohammed al-Bakhas has been doing his best to protect his family. He tries to keep their camp as sanitary as possible, but hasn't received any cleaning gear other than a single bar of soap. He has appealed to the UN for help.
We ask for disinfectants, sanitizers for the camp. We are a big group of people. Syrians have big camps. We ask the United Nations. We call upon the world to help us, and we are protecting ourselves and keeping it clean as much as we can. We can't do more than this.
Lebanese Health Minister Hamad Hassan says the international community has a shared responsibility to tackle the problem.
The international community and the UN institutions must without delay prepare the ground to save these communities in case the virus spreads among them. God forbid.
There haven't been any reported cases of COVID-19 infection in Lebanon's refugee community yet, but this could change quickly for the worse as national infection numbers and death tolls outside China continue to rise. The virus can survive in the air for up to 3 hours, meaning cramped conditions in refugee camps would allow it to spread rapidly. So far in Lebanon, there have been 4 coronavirus-related deaths.
A silver lining for Pakistan, as the United Nations has declared the country second on the rank among happiest countries in South Asia. The UN's World Happiness Report 2020 declared Finland as the world's happiest nation for the 3rd consecutive year. The report said Pakistan is at 29th global position, India at 144, Sri Lanka at 130, and Bangladesh is at 107. Pakistan has made significant improvement as the country was at 67th position in the last year's ranking. Meanwhile, India has slipped 4 ranks from 140 last year, near the bottom of the list of the 153 countries ranked. The report collects data on per capita GDP growth, social support, freedom to make life choices, and perceptions of corruption. The International Monetary Fund says the impact of the coronavirus pandemic will be severe, but the economic shock will be temporary. IMF Strategy Policy and Review head Martin Mehlison said the global economy is more resilient than it was before 2008 crisis. Mehlison said the long expansionary period and high employment rates mean the global economy should weather the storm. He said the main goal for governments should be to limit the spread of the virus in a way that provides confidence. The official said the authorities have already taken unprecedented measures to provide liquidity to markets to keep them functioning. He said the IMF is working for minimal interest rate loans to help emerging markets deal with sharp capital outflows. In the US, 2 Republican senators have been accused of selling shares before the prices dropped due to coronavirus fears. Both the senators are facing calls to resign. Senator Richard Burr dumped up to $1.7 million of stocks last month, while Kelly Loeffler sold holdings of worth $3 million in a series of transactions on the day Senate held a briefing on the virus. Both senators have denied doing any impropriety. In a tweet, Loeffler said, "The allegation is a ridiculous and baseless attack." President Donald Trump told reporters the senators should possibly be investigated. The U.S. law makes it illegal for the members of Congress to trade on the basis of non-public information gathered during their official duties. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.